In this activity, we will update bank accounts REST API from section 4 by adding an OData endpoint. As we've seen in previous sections, API components are deployable components used to expose sets of REST, SOAP, or OData endpoints for logical groups of APIs. And each API endpoint configured in an API component must have an independently deployed linked process that uses a web services server connector operation to listen for and act upon the requests. You can link the same process to any number of endpoints. As I said, in this activity, we're going to update the REST API from the previous section by adding an OData endpoint. Now, when your API uses OData as the protocol, the OData URI has three components: the service root URI, a resource path, and query options. We're going to work with all three URI components in this activity. OData also requires an XML response profile that uses a namespace, which is unique to OData protocol, and we've already created that for you. In order to expedite the learning process, the linked processes are already created, and we can download them from the process library. Now to get started, I'm going to create a new folder, section 5, OData, and I will save this folder. Now the processes can be downloaded from the process library, and a quick way to find them is to enter this filter of OData. I'll install database get one account OData, put that in section 5 folder, then go back in the library. I can install the other process. Now I'm going to view the process. I'm looking here at database get all accounts OData, and I need to load the database connection from section 2, Boomi Training MySQL, into this process. I'm going to open section 5 and open the other process, database get one account, so that I can load the database connector in here as well. Again, choosing it from section 2, which has already been deployed. So the implementation processes are pretty simple. The start shape will get that request. The database, we're doing here a get, and dynamic process property, the property name of param_id. Then the response will be mapped to XML. Now the other process doesn't have a parameter because this is going to get all the accounts, where the other one will be able to get using a key. So one of the unique things about OData is the XML profile, and you can see that this has already been configured appropriately. So I'm going to add an OData entity to the API. Now the API is back here in our section 4 folder. So open bank accounts. And then under the OData tab, I'll import an endpoint. I'm going to be importing using existing process. And I'm going to choose database get one account OData. Add that to OData, and we want the entity action of get entity by key. Now we do need to modify this. So here under the actions, I'm going to select edit entity and change the entity name to bank. Now the profile key, from the profile, we're going to be entering the ID. So if you are using an entity key, OData accepts only numeric values, but that ID is defined as a URI parameter in our process, so that will work. We are going to add an entity here under allowed actions. I'll say get entities, and I'm going to choose database get all accounts so that if the ID is not specified, the other process will retrieve all. That's really all we need to do here. I can save and close, and then we can redeploy the API and also deploy those linked processes. So I deployed the linked processes for the OData requests and redeployed the API. A simple way to call the API is by entering the URL into a web browser. You could also use a client like Postman, or you could use Excel. But I'm going to use the browser. So I'm going to start building the URL here. From the shared web server settings, I'll paste that. Now the remainder of that URL path will come from the component. And here is the path to OData. So I'll add that on. And when I enter that, I've already entered my username and password, but the first time you would need to provide your username and password or security token from the Atom's shared web server settings. So here I can see the collection title of bank. Now if I wanted to view the published metadata, I could append here metadata, and here is the metadata. So we see the property names, the entity container, as well as some header information there. If I wanted to get data from the entity set, I could replace metadata with bank. So here we're looking at the actual entity, which includes the different accounts. And so this is invoking the action of getEntities, which is returning all accounts. Now, if I just wanted information about one of the accounts, I could enter that. So here I'm entering that URI parameter for one of the accounts. And this invokes the action getEntityByKey and returns data about one of the accounts here in the response. Now with OData, there are a number of filters. So if I wanted to filter by account type, I could add that here. This does need to be base 64 encoded. So let me enter that, and then we can get this type checking. So here are the checking accounts within that OData entity. This video concludes now, but be sure to complete the exercises using Section 5 of the Activity Guide, which is available via the LMS.